In the inn's courtyard, Wei lowered its head, chewing fodder with a slow, steady rhythm. The night breeze tugged at its mane. Kaelan pushed open the door and stepped out. One look at that sleek, freshly brushed coat, and he let out a low chuckle. He strode over, threw an arm around its neck, and squeezed. "Been neglecting you, old friend. Tomorrow we run wild." Wei snorted, flicked its tail. Kaelan patted its head, turned, and shouldered through his room's door. As the panel swung shut, he smiled without looking back. "No need to hide on the beam. I know you're here." The words had barely faded when robes rustled overhead, faint razor, thin, like a night breeze catching gauze or a dead leaf scraping glazed tiles. Xylia's silhouette drifted down, skirt billowing, then settling around her. She landed without stirring a speck of dust. Her eyes flashed with wonder. "When did your cultivation reach this? Chronicle of Chaos hasn't breathed a word, and I'm already 6th tier Profound Gate. Don't tell me you just smelled me." "It wasn't that." Kaelan smiled and reached out to hook an arm around her waist. "Somebody tried luring me to a brothel." "That's how I figured their city demon purge was sloppy, meaning you hadn't gone far, and they staged it all, trying to drive a wedge between us." A trace of mirth flickered through Xylia's gaze. "Sending you to a brothel, offering you women, and you didn't take them. If the Demon Suppression Bureau really meant business, could you hide here without a whisper? They know damn well you're close. But they don't dare move recklessly, too scared I'll turn resentful, so they sweet, talk me into a pleasure house. You'd wait alone all night. Here I went whoring, and maybe get so angry you'd never speak to me again." Xylia paused, then bent over laughing. "Duskbloom is actually that amusing ha. She'd have better luck just stripping and seducing you herself." Kaelan just watched her, silent. His stare made her uneasy. She stopped laughing. "Why are you looking at me like that?" He tapped his own cheek. "Don't you think I did well? Worth a kiss." Sure enough, Xylia rose on her toes and pressed a light kiss to his cheek. The soft warmth of her lips touched his skin, branded it with startling clarity. An involuntary ripple moved down Kaelan's throat. Xylia's hand still rested on his shoulder, her fingertips cool. "Kaelan," her voice dropped low, "I came to pull down the dam inside your heart." She nudged him backward, step by step, toward the bed's edge. "You've been alone for years, full of hot blood and vigor. I can't give myself to you, so why should you stay pent up for me?" Her voice was hushed, frayed at the edges. "I'm the one unworthy of making you wait like this." Kaelan tried to speak, but she leaned in. Her lips found the side of his neck. The kiss started feather-light, then deepened moist, tender, trailing down the corded muscle of his throat. She stopped at his pulse point and sucked gently. Kaelan's breathing turned ragged. Her mouth traveled lower, skimming his collarbone, gliding toward his chest. Every kiss carried searing heat, pulling fine shivers across his skin. He could hear his own heartbeat thundering like a war drum. At the same moment, Xylia's slender hand slipped inside his collar. Her fingers were startlingly cold, trembling, but there was no hesitation. She wrapped them around him. Kaelan sucked in a sharp breath. "I can't give myself to you." Xylia lifted her head, the rims of her eyes tinged red. "But let me do this for now. All right." Her other hand caught his, guiding it inside her own garment. What met his touch was a sleek, impossibly soft swell. Kaelan's fingertips sank in. He felt her body go rigid for a heartbeat, but she didn't pull away. He swept her into his arms and turned, pressing her down beneath him. His hand, still buried in her clothes, tightened without thought, knuckles sinking into that plush warmth as if he'd kneed it apart. A muffled sound escaped Xylia's throat. It was tiny, forced through gritted teeth, yet it scorched Kaelan's mind blank. His other hand traced down the curve of her waist, reaching the long line of her legs. Xylia clamped her thighs together, trapping him between them. Skin met skin, and the sleek, satiny friction rasped against his rawest nerves. A low, guttural sound rumbled from Kaelan's throat. He began to move. Xylia bit her lower lip, thighs locked desperately tight, every stroke sending uncontrollable tremors through her. Kaelan bent his head and caught her earlobe between his lips. At last, a shattered whimper escaped her. The bed creaked softly. The air thickened with their tangled breathing, ragged and disordered. Kaelan hooked his hand around her ankle and lifted. Xylia's legs were forced tightly together in the air, the posture folding her entire body into his embrace. His motions grew rougher, knuckles pressing deep into the soft flesh of her thighs, each impact drawing out slick, hot friction. Xylia buried her face in the curve of his shoulder, biting her lip hard to keep silent, yet her body arched into him beyond her control. The long, elegant muscles of her legs tensed and slackened in his grip, toes curling inward. Kaelan's breath came faster and faster. He crushed her hard against himself. Xylia felt a burst of scalding heat flood between her thighs. The impact ripped a simultaneous groan from both of them. Kaelan's breath heaved like a drowning man breaking the surface, chest surging. Xylia's fingers dug into his back, leaving red trails. It was as though a great dam had shattered. The pent-up torrent, stored too long, burst free with all its gathered force, more violent than he'd imagined. Their sweat mixed, sticky and scorching. For a long moment, only panting breaths filled the room. Xylia recovered first. She slid out of his arms, hurrying to straighten her dress. Facing away, her shoulders shook slightly. "I'm leaving." Her voice came out hoarse. "My subordinates will grow suspicious." She didn't dare look back. One more glance, and she might not leave at all. Her skirt swept over the threshold, vanishing into the night. Kaelan opened his palm and stared down at it. It seemed to still hold the memory of that softness and its lingering heat. Her scent, a faint fragrance, still hung in the air. He slowly clenched his fist, then released it. Nothing remained between his fingers, but his palm burned fiercely. Kaelan exhaled a long breath and straightened his thoroughly disheveled collar. As his fingertips smoothed the creased fabric, he recognized that his state of mind was no longer what it had been a day ago. Some paths once stepped upon allowed no turning back. He bent toward the foot of the bed and picked up the golden foil that Xylia, finding it an uncomfortable lump, had tossed aside. Thin as a leaf, cool against his palm. "If you truly are a heavenly script, then you're far too unassuming, returned to utter simplicity," he murmured to himself. His fingertip held a bead of fresh blood, and he let it fall. The blood rolled over the golden foil's surface, no reaction. He brought it close to the oil lamp, letting flames lick its edge. It remained inert, a dead object. He dropped it into a basin of water. The clear liquid spread over it, ripples stirring, but nothing changed. Kaelan's gaze fell upon the silk handkerchief beside the bed. The faint traces Xylia had left behind the night before were still visible. He pressed the silk against the golden foil, letting moisture seep into it. The foil stayed silent. "Damn!" Kaelan rinsed the golden foil clean and tucked it back into his robe. Disappointment, not exactly. An object hidden in a meditation cushion by a powerful sword cultivator of the previous era couldn't be ordinary. Perhaps the time simply wasn't right. Night had deepened. He closed his eyes and sank into deep sleep, a night without dreams. When dawn's light pierced through the window lattices, Kaelan jolted awake. He hadn't dreamed of the veil. Could it be this golden foil was truly nothing of importance? He flipped over, sat up, and pulled out the golden foil, holding it up to the light. His entire body froze. The golden foil, which had been utterly blank the day before, now held shifting shadows upon its surface like a deep pool formed from condensed wisps of light. At the bottom of that pool, two figures emerged. Himself and Frost. That battle was replaying. A faint screen of light rose from the surface of the golden foil, images drifting like spectral shadows. Slow, so slow that every movement was deconstructed into frame-by-frame stills. When his gods and Buddha's scatter slashed out, the blade's trajectory left a ghastly arc of lingering light across the screen, every ripple of surging astral chi visible in perfect clarity. That reverse sweep of Frost's sword, the tip piercing the air with such incisive sharpness. He could even see the visible white trails torn through the airflow. Flaws, nothing but flaws. Kaelan's breath stopped. He saw his own follow-up strike lag by half a breath, his torso and abdomen gaping wide open. He also saw that Frost's sword momentum, for all its ferocity, had 3 points of stiffness in its transitions. Not a lack of cultivation, but a problem with the sword art itself. If they fought now, he was confident he could shatter the opponent within 3 moves. Kaelan clenched the golden foil, his knuckles turning white. Who needed a famous master, that painstaking frame-by-frame replay, that was the best teacher you could ask for. One careful review beat 100 reckless fights. Under that slow-motion scrutiny, the sword hut scripture had no secrets left. It was stripped bare. Yesterday, every trick he tried had failed, so why did the golden foil activate on its own after he slept? Had the start of summer passed overnight? Or did that drop of blood and essence just need time to soak in? If he waited for a real yin-yang union down the line, what else might change? He tucked the golden foil against his chest. He'd meant to leave Sword Lake City, but now there were things he needed to verify. Behind the pleasure house, the courtyard lay still. Bamboo whispered. The doorman didn't stop him, and Kaelan climbed the stairs. Duskbloom was bent over her desk writing. Her handmaiden, bowed chin, packed traveling cases nearby. Duskbloom's brush paused. She raised her eyes. "Young master, you should not have come here today." Kaelan met her gaze. "First seat, Duskbloom. This Zhao would ask you to give him a few pointers." She hesitated. Pointers? That word from Kaelan's mouth carried a weight she couldn't ignore. His ties to the imperial court made things delicate. She couldn't play the imperial tutor. Kaelan read her face and added quickly, "It's just the polite cant of the martial world. A spar. I want to see the gap between me and the third ranked on the earthly chart." Duskbloom set down her brush and rose. She stood behind the writing desk, robes still. The atmosphere of the bamboo pavilion congealed in an instant. "Since it is the gap you wish to see," she lifted her right hand. Kaelan's pupils contracted. A single jade finger rose, maddeningly slow. The air rippled along with it. Concentric rings spread from her fingertip, layer on layer. Light warped and refracted around her knuckle, like a reflection underwater. That finger was still 3 feet away, yet Kaelan felt the space around him lock down. The wind died. The creaking bamboo fell silent. Even his heartbeat grew sluggish, thick. The skin of his throat tightened. Every fine hair stood up. Sharp intent unmatched, condensed to a single point. From 3 feet away, his throat already felt the bone, cold pierce. He tried to dodge, but his body was mired in quicksand, each movement caught and dragged by an unseen force. The finger, unhurried and steady, split the air straight for his Adam's apple. There was no touch. Duskbloom's fingertip stopped 3 inches from his throat. Kaelan stood frozen. Cold sweat beaded on his brow. "You trust your eyes and ears too much." Duskbloom slowly withdrew her finger, and the air's ripples faded. "What is seen, what is heard, is not necessarily the truth." She turned away, her tone even. "Rigidity snaps easily, suppleness endures. Look at rivers surging into the sea. The crashing torrent is rigidity. The winding through 100 turns is suppleness. The sea receives all rivers, conquering through yielding, uniting rigidity and suppleness." Kaelan didn't move. The chill at his throat hadn't faded, but something inside his mind felt pierced open by that finger. Inside the inn-room, a lamp flame trembled. Kaelan pulled the golden foil from his chest. The moment he fed it a thread of spiritual power, the foil shimmered light, rippled like wind over spring water. The screen unfurled in the dimness, and the final scene replayed. Duskbloom's jade finger extended, the tip sliced through the air's currents, drawing a visible ripple of pliant, lingering light. The trajectory looked leisurely, unhurried, almost gracefully rhythmic. Kaelan's pupils shrank. He still couldn't grasp how a finger so slow had sealed his throat before the thought of evasion even formed. The light grew clearer. He dragged his chair close, braced his hands on his knees, and nailed his gaze to the screen. The finger's shadow replayed, over and over. Each trace tore a sliver of faint radiance, leaving ripples that spread through the air. Not a hard surge of true Kai, just a will so pliant that the very air seemed to roll in long, soft waves. His divine sense sank deep. Without realizing, he raised his right hand, index and middle fingers together, tracing the light's path. The movement was raw, clumsy. His knuckles still remembered the domineering grip of a blade's hilt. Every empty stroke was awkward, stiff, like dragging an iron rod through water. He didn't notice. He just clenched his jaw and traced, stroke after stroke. Outside, the water clock dripped. 1 hour, 3 hours. His fingers were no longer stiff. The empty tracings began to flow with smooth harmony. Muscles in his fingers, wrist, forearm, his whole shoulder and back found the texture of that suppleness through countless repetitions. His movements still carried the heavy weight of the blade, but beneath that weight, a thread of flowing, lingering power had taken root. Unbeknownst to him, the images in the golden foil had grown sharper. The finger shadows, once vague, were now distinct in every detail. He could see the fine lines of Duskbloom's fingertip. Each wore aglow with a warm, jade-like luster. The soft light in her eyes, the focused intent flickering on her brow as her finger, extended even the nearly inaudible tremor of her fingertip breaking the wind. Kaelan jolted. It was as if he truly heard that tremor, subtle, pliant like the final note of a zither string plucked by a spring breeze over a lake. The golden foil made no sound. That sound was a detail his divine sense, immersed to its limit, had reconstructed on its own. He snapped back to awareness. He'd been staring at Duskbloom's replay again and again for how many times? That fingertip, that glance, those faintly trembling lashes had rooted deep in his memory, vivid in every detail. Kaelan closed his eyes and covered his face with one hand. If First Seat, Duskbloom, ever found out he'd spent 3 hours since last night memorizing the way she carried herself, his face burned. With a self-mocking laugh, he snapped the golden foil shut and stood. The light died. For a moment, the room was silent, but for the soft sway of the lamp flame. He shrugged his outer robe off the chair, shook it out with a flick, and draped it over his shoulders. The bundle cloth spread open a few changes of clothes, loose silver, a fire striker, the demon, suppression agent's jade token. He laid them in one after another, movements crisp, no hesitation, those insights from the finger strike. He'd refine them on the road. In the inn's rear courtyard, snow-steed Onyx snorted. Its jet, black mane, quivered in the dawn breeze. Kaelan approached with his pack slung across his back, unhooking his wine gourd as he walked. He lifted a fresh jar warming by the counter. The clay seal cracked, wine scent surged up. He lined up the gourd's mouth against the jar's rim, tilted his wrist just so. The wine streamed in, a clear, lingering trickle. The splash of liquor overlapped with the lingering hiss of that finger strike tearing through air. Beneath the burbling flow lay the aftertaste of a blade, and something more elusive. His hand paused. He looked down at the wine, spilling over his fingers, and smiled. The stopper rammed home. He swung onto the horse, gathering the reins with a light tug. Let's go. The black horse turned, walking slowly toward the city gate. Morning light rose bright, steady hooves faded far down Long Street. Beneath a blazing sun like molten metal, cracked earth spread spiderweb patterns to the horizon. Blackened stalks drooped along field ridges, crumbling to fragments under a gust of wind. The air hung thick with parched dust, and the sour stench of sweat drifting from the distance. Wayside villages lay in ruined cottages with sparse thatching, doors hanging askew, dark doorways empty of any human shadow. A dozen figures burst from the road ahead, gaunt, hollow-eyed, brandishing rusty knives and wooden clubs. They blocked the way. Kaelan reined in his horse. He didn't draw a blade. He simply pulled vast blade free and swung it casually at a dead tree by the roadside. A flash of steel, the trunk split at waist height, splinters flying, crashing into the dust with a groan. The bandits all recoiled, eyes wide, scrambling backward in a stumbling clump. Kaelan kept the blade level. A long breath escaped him. I'm not going to kill you. Just answer a few things. Their leader's throat worked. A dry bob. Sir, we got no coin. No women, neither. Kaelan's gaze scraped over their shredded clothes, the hollow pits of their eyes. This is Jyong H. Why, how the hell did it get this bad? Floods the year before last, locusts last year. This year we barely crawled through the hungry spring. The man's voice cracked raw. Yesterday, tax officers rolled in for the head tax. That's why we took to the hills. Kaelan lifted his face to the sky. The sun was a mute, brutal coin. The Caobong and the Salt Gang are both right here. Why not find shelter with them, earn your rice? A mutter drifted from the back, got elders still at home. Right then, a figure lurched down the slope, wheezing like a bellows about to split. Eldest brother Jiang, second uncle's asthma it's flaring bad. Any me la forzu talismans left.
None left.
The leader's face went slack, a sick gray. He whipped around, move, uphill, report to the Buddha. We're joining the sect. The mob surged up the mountain, bodies churning dirt. Not one of them spared Kaelan a flick of a glance, standing there in the road's center. Kaelan didn't stop them. He nudged his horse forward without a word, hooves thudding a dry, empty rhythm against the cracked earth. He drew close to the riverbank. A splintered skiff wobbled on the water. An old fisherman bent his spine into a bow, hauling a net that dripped a meager scatter of fingerlings. No silks, leaved boat girls with song in their throats from some prosperous age, just the water glinting with a flat, dead sheen. Stop, you damn thief. A roar tore across the opposite bank. A burly man crashed forward, blade leading. Ahead of him, a wiry shape skimmed the river's surface like a swallow, feet pecking the water, the gale of his passage screaming straight for the flank of Kaelan's horse. Kaelan angled to sidestep, but the wiry man's gaze ignited with sudden, ugly greed. In that half-breath as he streaked past, his right wrist twisted and his fingers hooked into claws, raking right for Kaelan's chest. Kaelan's eyes cut to slits. His right arm snapped up, freight fast, a fist like a vinegar jug, howling through the wind, detonating square into the man's face. The Kai burst with a muffled crack of thunder. Cheekbones cratered inward. Blood from his nose and shattered teeth misted the air. His body spun like a flung sack, slammed the river, and hoisted a white pillar of water sky-high. As the spray pattered down, the burly man was already splashing through, one heavy foot grinding down on the struggling man's leg. The bones snapped with a wet crunch. The wiry man let out a soul's end wail. The big man swiped water off his face, cupped his fists, and loosed a booming laugh. I'm Wondung, Leo of the Caobong. Much obliged for your just hand, brother. May I ask your honored name? Kaelan hadn't yet opened his mouth when the man with the ruined leg convulsed, a tremor racking him whole. His eyes stretched wide. He was staring at the black hide and white hooves, the scar slashed across the rider's face, that absurdly broad blade. Black horse, white hooves, that freakish vast blade, a blade scar on the face. His lips shuddered, and the words ripped out of him in a shriek. Your shishay shoel w, o Kaelan. Silence clapped over the riverbank. Wandung, Leo's grin froze mid, brandish on his bronze face. The fisherman's oar hung in the air. Even the water's lap seemed to clot solid. Every pair of eyes nailed itself to Kaelan. A muscle in Kaelan's face jumped, a violent tick. He vaulted off the horse. He grabbed the man's collar, his voice forced through teeth. What did you just call me? The man shuddered under the pain, but didn't dare refuse an answer. You cultivate the bloodshed art, wield the bloodfiend's saber art. Your eyes run bloodshot when you strike, and that one killer move it looks like you're devouring a living body. Anyone who stands against you ends up without a whole corpse. If you aren't bloodthirsty, who is? As for Shoel W.O. The Arhats of the mate, Rhea sect spread that word. They say a Shoel W.O. is an ancient malevolent deity, immensely strong, quick to rage and battle. He swallowed a dry click, then twisted the blade. They also say Shoel W.O. come male and female. The males are hideously ugly. Kaelan dragged in a long breath, turned his head by slow degrees, a vein thick as a twig worming across his temple. Wandung, Leo finally scraped his voice back, coughed out a dry laugh. So it's Brother Zhao of the Qin, Lung Bois, H.R. Ba, your name truly cracks like thunder. This cur stole a crucial item from our Caobong, and your intervention handed him to us. Since coincidence has thrown us together, let me buy you a jar of wine in the city. Kaelan's fist was still clamped on the man. Hold on, this nickname. Wandung, Leo, catching the sore spot, grinned wide. If Brother Zhao minds it, it's a small matter. Our Caobong holds some weight in the martial world. We can surely help clear things up and pick you a title with a little more swagger. Kaelan's eyes lit sharp and immediate. Wandung, Leo waved toward the opposite bank. Several Caobong men bolted over, trussed the wiry man, and hauled him off. Kaelan let him drop, swung back into the saddle. Wandung, Leo found a horse, and the two rode flank to flank along the river, aimed straight for Yong, Zhou. Hooves clattered over a moss-furred stone archbridge, and Yong, Zhou's gates yawned wide. The flagstones, burnished to a mirror by centuries, cast back, wavering green from the willows lining both banks. Thick perfume, face powder, the sweet heavy reek of wine, all of it churned together in the spring breeze and laid itself across them like a blanket. Wandung, Leo led Kaelan straight into the Shoshangguan, up to a private room. Dishes and wine landed on the table, cups rose and drained. Wandung, Leo chuckled. Brother Zhao, you've come swaggering into Zhong. None like a tiger off the mountain, what grand cause brings you here? Kaelan pressed his cup flat, a half-smile ghosting his lips. I only caught a thief for you. All this enthusiasm is making me a bit itchy. Wandung, Leo shook his head. Caught a thief, Brother Zhao. Do you even know who that was? A face from Zhong, Non. I honestly didn't recognize him. Brother Wan, enlighten me. That's the infamous Kong. Kong mi, oh, Shou Jichun, Kong, Wandung. Leo exhaled heavily. This man doesn't just love stealing objects, he's obsessed with sniffing out people's hidden dirt. If he can wallpaper the city with stolen proof, nothing in the world makes him happier, and me, sure, I've got some pull, but I tried to catch him alone for a reason. He'd grabbed something that could ruin me, Brother Zhao stepping in. That's no different from saving my life. Kaelan's thought flickered, dry and brief. Asterisk, so he was about to be socially gutted. The martial world's a big place, full of every kind of freak. Asterisk, he smiled. How does Brother Wan plan to deal with him? Kill him? Wandung, Leo said. He hasn't done real harm yet, and I'm not fond of killing, but I can't just turn him loose and wait for him to fall off the wagon. I've sent him to our main hall to cool his heels for a while. But speaking of your fame, Brother Zhao, it's even bigger here in Zhong, none than in Bei. Kaelan set his cup down. I was about to ask that myself. My name mostly rattles around Bei. Down here in Zhong, Non, the best they'd get is a few lines in the Chronicle of Chaos. Yet you people seem to know my business better than the North, and you've already cooked up a nickname for me. Wandung, Leo leaned back in his chair, easy and slow. A hub of canal traffic word spreads thicker here than anywhere else. That's reason one. Reason two. He paused, amusement flickering hot in his eyes. The Matrias sect, quite honestly, has boosted you. Kaelan stiffened. They promoted me. Wandung, Leo said, Brother Zhao, you're a traitor to the blood god cult under the Four Symbols sect, an enemy of the Four Symbols. You killed Valen, suspected imperial bastard, got a court warrant, then had it yanked after saving the QE family's daughter. Look at it from any side. You look like a prize the mate. Raya sect wants to win. Kaelan's fingers tightened, just slightly, around the wine cup. He'd come south for one purpose, to kick up hell for the Maitreya sect, and here they'd decided he was an ally. That mess at Gu, Jayan Hupan, he and Frost had snatched Xylia hostage and lit a fire under the four symbols' sect's pride. From the Maitreya sect's angle, that made him the enemy of their enemy, clean and simple. Wandung, Leo kept on, so it's only natural they'd spread your name around. Don't spit on the nickname Asura, Brother Zhao. The Maitreya sect peddles it as praise. They claim the new holy maiden of the four symbols sect is a discard you got bored of toying with. That you swatted a blood god cult hall master, dead with a casual wave. And even the cult leader himself couldn't stop you when he showed up in person. Propaganda like that puffs your image miles high. Your name booms in every ear across Jiangnan. Kaelan's palm hit the table, dishes jumped half an inch, wine slopped over the rims, a frozen light flared in his eyes. Each word he let scraped out, cold and separate. The blood debt the Maitreya sect owes I, Kaelan, will collect soon enough, with full interest. Wandung, Leo's cup froze midair, the clamor of the winehouse strangled into silence, a hand clamped around its throat. Then he chuckled, easing the air. Brother Zhao, simmer down, it's just a nickname. Pick another if you don't like it. I won't brag on the Caobong's other skills, but spreading nicknames, we're the best. All those jade-faced divine sword little white dragons popping up lately. Over 100 are ours, I'd bet. Kaelan's brow arched. Oh. Wandung, Leo refilled his cup. So what'll it be? What name do you want? Kaelan's mouth opened, but every name that came felt trite, vulgar. He slumped back and waved a hand. Forget it. I'll think on it. But Brother Wan, you and the Maitreya sect? Wandung, Leo flicked his hand. The Maitreya sect wants to spread its teachings in Jiangnan. Between us and the Caobong, it's like well water and river water. Separate. No friendship. It's just they've been spreading news about you, so we heard plenty. He leaned in, voice dropping. Strange thing is, you have no ties to them. Why would they go to all that trouble? Kaelan's gaze flickered with a knowing smile. Could all this warmth mean Wandung? Leo was from the Maitreya sect himself. The sect operates in Jiangnan. The Caobong is the local power. They must clash mortal enemies, or one and the same. This pleasure house, with its seedy undercurrent of evil, fit the Maitreya sect's methods exactly as the chief of Duskbloom described. Wandung, Leo's claim that Brother Zhao had no connection sounded less like analysis, and more like he was trying to distance himself. Oblivious, Wandung. Leo waved a meaty hand. Enough of that. Where's Ru Yan? The beaded curtain rustled. A slender figure stepped through, lotus steps delicate. Her hair fell like a black waterfall, and her brows carried a shy, spring, water charm. Pale hands clutched a silk kerchief, standing fragile as a willow in the breeze. She bit her lower lip and settled beside Kaelan, her soft body pressing through their clothes, warmth seeping into his arm. Ru Yan toasts you, young master. Her voice was an oriole's warble. Her pale hands lifted a porcelain cup, fingertips trembling. Kaelan didn't look at her. He tapped his fingers on the table, a corner of his mouth curling, but his gaze was cold as an ice-tempered blade. He leaned back, flicked his wrist to take the cup, and drained it. Wandung, Leo, his own girl in his arms, squinted at them and burst out laughing. Ru Yan, Brother Zhao's used to being a mountain king. What kind of virtuous woman hasn't he seen? Cut the coy act. He slammed his cup down, splashing wine. Get to the point. Kaelan noted how effective this routine was, but after seeing Duskbloom's ethereal purity, where autumn waters seemed divine, Ru Yan's painted charms felt dull. He waved a hand. Brother Wan, I've sampled plenty of women. These don't excite me. Atmosphere's enough. Wandung, Leo laughed heartily, naturally. What Brother Zhao cherishes must be a remarkable forlorn lady like Arindra, with a red tint hidden in her sword, or a pampered little princess like the Kui family's Yanyang rays. In gold and jade, a pleasure house lacks flavor. Kaelan tugged at the corner of his mouth, silent. Wandung, Leo leaned in. But even if you get what you want one day, they might not give you the tender devotion Ru Yan offers. Such softness, such wholehearted service, not the same. True, true. Kaelan flicked a glance at Ru Yan, who lowered her eyes just then, her gaze nearly weeping. He couldn't keep the banter up. 2 dry coughs and he steered elsewhere. Brother Wan, it's getting late. You have matters tomorrow, right? Wandung, Leo took the hint, arm around his girl as he rose, grinning. Ru Yan, see to young Master Zhao well tonight? Ru Yan's brows glistened coyly, head dipping with a soft Kaelan played the randy haste, bundling her into the guest chamber. The door groaned shut. She leaned against it, blushing. Young master, shall Ru Yan draw a bath for you? He swept her up, leaped onto the bed. Enough fuss. I'm in a hurry. Aya, gently. Why such an impatient beast? Outside, a servant pressed an ear to the wall, then shook his head and retreated. Inside, the coquettish chatter still hung, but the lust in Kaelan's eyes had hardened into icy stars. His finger stabbed out, splitting the air with a piercing whistle. The fingertip touched Ru Yon's sleep acupoint, a tremor of true Kai, and her body went rigid an instant before melting limp, unconscious. Kaelan flipped upright, his gaze clearing like a whetted blade. Only a fool touches a woman linked to the Maitreya sect. Who knows how she's controlled? He sneered, then dragged over his bundle, untying the straps. Matte, black night garments shook out, stiff folds snapping open. He shed his outer robe and pulled on the black clothes in swift movements. Fabric tightened at cuffs, cinched at waist, every rustle like a bowstring drawing taut. He drew a slow breath, Kai sinking to the dantian, and his presence blurred into the shadows, swallowed whole. The window lattice cracked open, night mist, damp and chill, surged in, candles guttered violently, Kaelan's figure thinned with the shadows, siphoned away by the fog. The window leaves clicked shut, no louder than an insect's wing, his silhouette swept out. On the roof tiles, someone might have caught the faintest whisper of a footfall, but only saw a wisp of smoke, like afterimage dissolving into the dark. A final thought flickered. With such a hasty exit, people will think I lasted 3 seconds in that room, no matter. The real task lies ahead. Trail Wandung, Leo. He stalked the ink, black streets, Wandung, Leo's silhouette ducking into a compound before Kaelan doubled back, careful not to leave a trace. An hour later, he slipped into the guest chamber just before the sky paled. Ru Yon still lay motionless. He released her acupoint with a touch, feigned sleep until she stirred. She smiled, thinking he'd been there all night. Then came the small talk, her coy probing, and the casual mention that made him choke on his wine. Arindra was in Yong, Joe. Too he spat, the amber droplets scattering like shattered diamonds. He coughed violently, chest heaving. Damn, what a cursed coincidence. Ru Yon watched his unguarded reaction, a complex flicker in her eyes. Her frame loosened, even her lips curved. If young master truly fancies the heroine Arindra, Ru Yon could dress up as her. Kaelan's hand sliced the air. I've had my fill of fakes, say no more. She hid her smile. Outside, the inquashed sky was fading, pale gray light seeping through the gauze curtains. He wiped the dregs from his lips, the earlier flash of emotion suppressed. His voice sank low. How does one pay homage to the Maitreya sect? Her fingertips trembled, a flinch like ice wind piercing marrow. She hung her head, lips quivering. I, Ru Yon, does not know. I am a devout Buddhist. I wish to worship Maitreya. He leaned forward. Which temple in Yong, Joe? The dawn light sharpened his jawline. Ru Yon stared at that blade, like profile, and finally, voice a thin thread. Outside the city 10 lie by Lion Se. The words drained her strength, cold sweat drenching her. Kaelan eased back against the bedpost. The candle stub's dying flame leaped once, then drowned in blue smoke. Later, at by Lionsea, Arindra lay prone upon the great beam, spine pressed to cold, dust-laden wood. Sandalwood smoke curled through the hall. Through that bluish haze, her gaze locked onto the door like a hawk's. A monk had rushed in moments ago. She'd already slowed her breathing into long, thread-like strands. Kaelan is here. He says he has come to offer incense. Abbot Fa-Iwan smiled without smiling, the wrinkles around his eyes carving deep ravines in the shifting incense light. Yesterday, Wandung, Leo made our goodwill clear enough. If he has no objections, he will naturally come to meet us. Arindra's heart clenched. Last night's disaster at Shongguan still scraped at her ears. That bastard Kaelan, tangled up with a courtesan named Ru Yon in some pleasure house. When she'd stayed under his roof, he'd never so much as looked at her sideways, not a whisper of impropriety. She'd even made her peace with the unspoken role of the bandit chief's woman, and yet he'd never once called her wife. Now this, the man had taught himself to haunt brothels. Her molars ground tight, her thumb drifted to the pommel of her sword and traced the sheath's pattern, a dry, hissing rasp. She choked that blind surge of fury back down. She knew his bone, deep chivalry. A man like Kaelan didn't show up in strange Yong, Joe for red lanterns. Whatever drew him to buy Lionsea, it was something hidden. The temple doors swung wide and a draft punched through, churning incense smoke into rolling clouds. Heavy boots met stone. Each muffled step struck her chest like a drum. Arindra narrowed her eyes through the shifting haze. There he was, months gone, striding into the hall. Dragon's gait, tiger's stride. Beneath his robes, the muscles of his shoulders and back swelled, cutting sharp angles into the cloth. She paused. Every time she laid eyes on him, his aura had shifted. On Barrow Mountains, he'd been a raw, wild bandit. Now that edge was sheathed, replaced by something composed and tight, the oppressive weight of a mountain held still. For a single instant, Arindra saw in Kaelan that same tiger-heavy dominance Wantayan Sheung carried. Then the brothel flashed back, and her expression iced shut. Kaelan's gaze swept the empty hall, his brow ticked up. I'd expected a crush of worshippers, monks filling every corner. Fatyuan smiled. You may not know, benefactor. We urge believers to practice at home. Our monkhood has always been small. As for worshippers, they finish their prayers and go back to their livelihoods. The thought cut through Kaelan's mind clean and fast. This pattern was pure white lotus. The true Maitreya sect was never so soft. This monk had cobbled his own version. Kaelan settled onto a prayer mat. The corded muscle beneath his robes eased, but his spine held straight as a spear. A monk served tea. The room settled into the heavy quiet of a Dharma discussion. May I ask the master's Dharma name? Fatyuan. Before ordination, I cultivated at home under the lay title Halford. Perhaps you've heard it. A needle of wariness flickered deep in Kaelan's eyes. Halford, the name Xylia had tossed out as a kill target. A man guaranteed a spot on Duskbloom's docket, and here he stood, a respectable abbot, seamless. Kaelan plastered an honest grin across his face. Sounds familiar. Can't place it, though. I've only been in the martial world a short while. Plenty of heroes still left to meet. Fatyuan took no offense. He clapped his hands together, soft. You've only just stepped in, yet the reputation you've earned is rare. That Shishay Shoelwo incident, that was our goodwill. Don't hold it against us. Goodwill, was it? Kaelan feigned a huff. More like he wanted to slap the four symbols sect across the face. Fatyuan's smile spread warmer. You and the Maitreya sect, benefactor, are a match chosen by heaven. Above, Arindra's knuckles went white on her sword. She could hear Kaelan probing, but his reply had slipped out so smooth it almost rang true, as if he were honestly considering it. All that time in bandit strongholds had sharpened his acting to a razor's edge. A nameless thread of unease coiled in her gut. She forced it down and sharpened her senses, listening. Kaelan cut straight. I'm a man of the wilds, never read a single sutra, but since fate's brought me here, master, enlighten me. Maybe I do have some affinity with the Dharma. No polish, no dance. That raw directness landed harder than any careful approach. Fatyuan's eyes flooded with approval. This ruffian, cast out by the Kiwi family, should hold exactly such thoughts, grind the noble's bones underfoot, snatch Kiwiana for his own savage pleasure. That was true vengeance. Why wait 3 years for the mortal chart? Fatyuan's voice slid lower. Are you aware, benefactor, that over 10 years ago, the emperor launched a persecution of Buddhism, temples razed. The Sangha withered to nothing within days. Kaelan had read this in books, but he kept the face of a man hearing it fresh. Fatyuan went on. So unpopular a policy could not stand. Protests rose from court and countryside. Even the emperor couldn't hold the line alone. In recent years, restrictions have loosened. The Buddhist path has rekindled from the ashes. He paused. The light and shadow thrown by incense flames carved deep gullies across his face. And before that rekindling, the Maitreya sect had been spreading the Dharma in secret for years. Kaelan leaned forward. Because practicing at home under the guise of a fraternal association offers high concealment, precisely, a flare of light shot from Fatyuan's eyes. But more crucially, we have fulfilled the prophecy. What prophecy? The descent of Maitreya to attain Buddhahood. Fatyuan's expression settled into stone, each word sinking into the hall's dark corners. When the Buddha Sakyamuni declines, the Buddha Maitreya shall uphold the world. This prophecy appeared before the persecution. And now, with swords at our throats, does it not align perfectly with heaven's mandate? Our sect leader is the Maitreya reborn from the previous Kalpa, come to guide us into the great vehicle. The monks pressed their palms together as one. Their low chanting rippled through the hall. Kaelan's heart slammed against his ribs. Asterisk meridian ossification can be undone. Asterisk, those 5 words drove into his temples like a white, hot iron spike. His temples throbbed. His eardrums roared. The chanting washed out into a distant tide, leaving only the ragged tear of his own breath trapped in his throat. He'd held it without knowing. He locked his eyes on Fatyuan's smiling face. His knuckles cracked inside his sleeves. Up above, Arindra's stomach dropped. She knew exactly what this meant to him. 10,000 false Arindras stacked together wouldn't weigh as much as those 5 words. Fatyuan caught that crack in his control. The corner of his mouth curled. He folded his hands slow and began to toy with his prey. Of course, such sublime dharma is not for ordinary beings. Only a bodhisattva can attain it. Benefactor Zhao, please return and study the sutras first. Perhaps the station of a 10th stage bodhisattva awaits you. Kaelan sucked in a sharp breath. The searing heat in his chest plunged into ice water. Above the grand dome, that ancient Buddha stared down in wooden silence. Centuries of shadow pooled in the peeling gold of its downturned eyes, pressing down with a crushing weight. I've never read a single scripture. How the hell am I supposed to study them? Fa Iwan's smile blurred, drifting up from beneath the statue's pedestal, sticky as spider silk. The Buddha saves those with karmic affinity. Since you are destined to be among us, someone will naturally impart the teachings. You might even find some unexpected surprises waiting. The Buddha stayed mute. Kaelan rose, turned, and stepped out into the white glare beyond the temple doors. The reins were clenched deathly tight. Rough cowhide bit into his palm, his knuckles blanched bone, white, veins bulging and sinking like worms under the skin. When Kaelan spurred his horse from the temple grounds, his whole arm was rigid. Morning wind swept in off the plain's edge, slashing through his collar. Knife cold? The body in the saddle jolted as if shocked. He blinked. Frost had gathered on his lashes without him noticing, now scattered by the wind into icy mist. His pupils, hit by the chill, contracted from scattered blankness back to needle, sharp points. The city's clamor rolled over him from afar, hawkers yelling baked cakes, the smith's hammer clanging, the hollow slap of water against canal boats. Layer by layer, it pulled him out of that dazed spiral. Kaelan exhaled slow, a thick gust of turbid air, and looked down at his hands. The reins had carved 2 deep grooves into his flesh. A self-mocking twist pulled at his mouth. So much for composure. Poke what truly matters, and even the strongest guard crumbles. Don't sneer at the gullibility of cult devotees. It's only a question of whether the needles found the cracks in your own bones. But push the thought deeper. Even someone like Xylia, holding his own domain, swore only heavenly treasures could alter fate. Duskbloom, with a nation's martial resources at its back, never breathed a word of such a thing. What could a drifting martial sect possibly offer? Either the cost is complete and utter servitude, or it's a hollow lie. Couple that with the soul-binding arts, overheard last night, and today's, someone will impart the teaching. 9 times out of 10, it's the worn path of celestial maidens transmitting dharma through bodily fluids, dual cultivation, essence, siphoning. Probably with a soul, brand seared in for good measure. The greater the desire, the deeper the snare. Kaelan gave a cold laugh, loosened the reins, and patted his horse's neck. He still held enough value to be coveted. Just as he's turning it over, a shout bursts from the upper floor on his right. The rider beneath the bridge. Could you be Shishay Show LWO Kaelan? Kaelan turns his head, a street-side tavern, its 2nd floor, an open veranda. A young man leans against the railing, his stare carving down from on high, disdain dripping like he's eyeing a stray dog. Behind him, Wandung, Leo hurries out, his face a careful mask of anxious placation. Brother Tang, peace begets prosperity. Kaelan's tone stays flat. It's Kaelan, not Shoeldouble, UO, and you are. The young man thrusts his chin up. Gu, Sutong Buchi. Noted, Kaelan waves a hand, dismissive. 20, for 120th on the hidden dragon list. Go home and train a few more years with your elder sister, and stay away from the pleasure gardens meanwhile. A muscle beneath Tong Buchi's eye spasms. The chief seat of Duskbloom is my paternal aunt. Cough, cough, cough. Kaelan nearly chokes on his own spit. For an instant his brain derails, Qiyana's young face flashes up, and he blurts, nephew, be good now. Yong Zhou is a place for grown folk. Go home and drink your milk. Insolent wretch, how dare you wag your tongue, taste my sword. A springtide cascade spills down from the railing above. The blade glare shimmers like a March brook, slow, gentle, but its path twisting with slippery ambiguity. Heads crane from the 2nd floor, packed tight by diners, while pedestrians halt in the street, holding their breath and straining on tiptoe. A clash on the hidden dragon list, a rarity genuine blade to blade combat right before their eyes. Someone in the tavern mutters, that sword work, why does it look so sluggish? Before the sentence can finish, Dragon Sparrow screams from Kaelan's back. The blade shoots out at an angle no one can decipher. Yet in the space where inches should have separated them, the air explodes with the nerve. Grating shriek of metal striking metal. When eyes catch up, sword and blade have already collided, as if Tong Boot, she flew in just to offer his weapon up for the strike. A collective uproar sweeps through the tavern. Tong Buchi, unable to absorb the force midair, flips back, his toes perching on the railing. The earlier contempt is wiped clean, replaced by grim solemnity. The trajectory of the Springwater sword art was seen through in a single glance. And the subtle ebbs and surges of power within that saber stroke, faintly carry a hint of the Tang clan's foundational intent. The man who spoke earlier falls utterly silent, reaching up to touch his own throat. A film of cold sweat crawls across his back. Had he faced that strike, his larynx would be pierced through already. Wandung, Leo, wine cup in hand, chooses that moment to speak, unhurriedly patching the scene for both sides. The Springwater sword art is ever shimmering and elusive. If any of you truly spotted its form, you'd be on the hidden dragon list yourselves. Brother Tang's strike already carries its own bearing, the mark of a grandmaster in the making. Even I would be left scrambling. Tong Bu Chi glances back, gives a slight nod, and accepts the face Wan Dung, Leo has so carefully preserved for him. After all, having just been driven back by a single stroke in front of everyone, his disadvantage is plain for all to see. Wan Dung, Leo's words wrap his honor hole and present it back to him intact. Wan Dung, Leo then turns toward the bridge below, and Brother Zhao's saber stroke, piercing illusion, striking to the very essence. That is a battle instinct tempered in the blood, soaked crucible of the martial world, something we shut, in cultivators, cannot match. What's more, his saber force already shows the union of hardness and softness. In my view, his place on the Qin, Lung Ba's, HR, Ba is too low. He ought to be ranked higher. Kaelan raises his eyes and glances at him with a faint smile, accepting the goodwill. The man is slick as a loach. That last remark likely drips with the hidden venom of reminding everyone Kaelan is no longer the man he once was, but as an impromptu commentary, it's time to perfection. Laughing aloud, Kaelan wheels his horse around. Nephew, your sword is passable, but still in need of the whetstone. Tong Bu Chi roars from the tavern floor. If I ever hear you disrespect my family elders again, it will be an unending feud between us. Kaelan, not turning back, raises a hand in farewell. Hooves clatter across the stone bridge, vanishing into the alleys in the blink of an eye. Yet barely 2 turns on, a middle-aged man blocks the way in the shadows at the street's end. A former wanted fugitive, galloping through busy streets, brandishing blades and brawling. The man's face is stone. Honored, sir, you'll be coming with us to the Demon Suppression Bureau for a chat. Kaelan reins in his horse, the last faint warmth draining from his eyes. Tong Bu Chi hadn't pressed the matter openly, but then turned right around and sent the Demon Suppression Bureau after him, a game he played with practiced ease. Kaelan had been chewing over how to reach the Bureau himself, but before he even found their door, they cornered him. So the Yongzhou branch might not be all that clean after all. My wanted notice has been revoked. I'm no different from any ordinary citizen now. If you're seizing me for carrying a blade in a brawl, then what about Tong Bu Chi drawing his sword and provoking a fight in broad daylight? Kaelan's gaze turns cold, yet his voice stays eerily calm. Is the Demon Suppression Bureau the Imperial Court's Demon Suppression Bureau, or has it become the Tang family of Gu, Su's private Demon Suppression Bureau? The middle-aged man's Adam's apple bobs. His peripheral vision catches curious onlookers craning their necks in the distance, and his tone softens halfway. Sir, your wanted notice may be revoked, but that was a saving gesture from the chief seat of Duskbloom, extended to the Kui family. It doesn't mean old debts are forgiven. Moreover, with your bandit past, what exactly brings you into the city? It is my bureau's duty to inquire and investigate. Kaelan tugs the reins, steering his mount around the man. His words are cast into the wind. I entered the city for 2 reasons, the romance and allure of Yongzhou, and the people and figures of Zhongnan. He pauses, a flicker of self-mockery vanishing from his eyes in an instant. Now I have seen both. The romance is commendable, the people mediocre.